listening to Tim McKinney of ITW Evercoat. Evercoat, the brand trusted by more shops for automotive, commercial, and marine repairs than any others for almost 70 years. Bringing you continued innovations like Light Speed Repair System to streamline and improve repairs at the speed of light. Optex Filler with color-changing technology and Optex Super Build with a built-in guide coat. And now, here's Tim.
The body filler, it didn't hear, or it broke away or popped loose. Well, what did that cause? Well, that could have been because it was the proper substrate, but maybe it wasn't properly prepared, or it was wiped with something that wasn't supposed to, or it's an incompatible substrate. How do you know it was not the right substrate or it was the right substrate? Look at the technical data sheet. On the technical data sheet on our products, which if you go to evercoat.com, pull up your product, look in technical resources, you'll see where the technical data sheet is, and it will list all of the substrates that product has been tested on. And yes, I said tested on. We test them on those substrates to make sure we get good adhesion. If you've got a substrate where it's popped loose and it's not on there, that could be a reason why. It wasn't a compatible substrate. The next thing is it wasn't properly cleaned before you started sanding. I see this all the time where the idea is to sand off the contaminants. Trust me, you're not sanding off the contaminants. They're just getting trapped in your sandpaper. And then as you're sanding, you're moving those contaminants around. Clean the surface with soap and water before you start the repair. Follow that with a wax and grease remover to remove the wax, the grease, and the silicones, the petroleum things that won't come off with the soap and water. If we remove those and start sanding down through that layer, we're not going to run into wax or grease or silicone between the layers of paint. They weren't there. So take it off in the beginning is really going to help that. Other thing could possibly have caused it, maybe the surface was wiped with something that left a residue. I saw this firsthand with a friend of mine that used a particular solvent, and nothing was wanting to stick to the repairs. He could not figure out why. So let's go to the safety data sheet on that solvent and see what it's made out of. We went to it and found out, well, son of a gun, it had a particular solvent in it called naphtha. Naphtha is a very greasy solvent. It actually left an oily residue on the surface, and that was causing a problem for the adhesion for the material to go over top of it. So he didn't know that was causing the problem. I said, if we need to wipe it with anything, the cleanest, purest solvent that works with the polyester is going to be an acetone. But like I said, clean with wax and grease remover before you start the repair. You can use clean compressed air or even a vacuum cleaner. I was working with a gentleman, talking to him not too long ago. And Kevin, if you're listening, yes, I listened to you. He actually used a vacuum cleaner, and he would use the bristles to help to clean and agitate the surface to get all the dust off. I thought that was an excellent idea. So you want to make sure you get all the dust off, because dust is a contaminant in the process of mixing up the product and applying it over the surface as well. Something else that could have happened, maybe it was applied too thick, or the surface wasn't compatible, or maybe it wasn't structurally stable. My buddy and I were talking about it the other day. He actually had a repair. It was kind of oil canning. And for any younger technicians that don't know, ask an older technician. The panel was just as happy to be in as it was out. So he had it in, applied the product. He applied a lot of the material, and he was in a rush, God bless him. And when he did, what happened was the heat that was generated in the curing process caused the panel to buckle out. So he had to redo the entire repair. Make sure it's structurally stable before you apply the product. And sometimes putting a fiber reinforced product on can help to stabilize that just a little bit. How do you fix it? Well, first thing you have to do is make sure that it's compatible with the material you're going to be working with. Again, go to the tech data sheet at evercoat.com to be able to get that information. And make sure you don't have a problem surface that you're trying to fight. Resand the surface. You don't have to take the material out. Sorry. Sand the surface again with 80 to 180 grit. Remove the dust with clean compressed air, or as I said, with a shop vac, and make sure you've got a good sanded, dust-free surface to reapply the materials with. Wipe the surface with acetone if you need to. If you're not exactly sure if the surface is clean, or maybe there was residue left over from what was on there before, wipe it with acetone. If you wiped it with something you're not sure about, my advice is wipe it with acetone, sand it, and maybe wipe it again to make sure you get that material off and it doesn't get picked up in your sandpaper. Grab a fresh sheet of sandpaper as well. We don't want to make sure that that doesn't get in the sandpaper and we're just moving it around in the process of preparation and making more work for ourselves. So how do you prevent that? Again, go to the tech data sheet at evercoat.com and look for the approved substrates that the material can work on. That's going to be the best way to look at it. Anytime I'm working with a material, I lay out all my tech data sheets from my product I'm working with to my primer, to my color coat, to my clear coat to make sure everything works. And I follow through the chain of the grits as I'm going through that process. So it's a good idea. Do a little research before you start with the repair. No one likes doing things twice. Second, don't apply it over a surface that was clean with a lacquer thinner, wax and grease remover. As I said, those have some tail solvents in them that may not necessarily dissipate off, and they're going to leave a little bit on the surface. A wax and grease remover is designed to remove wax, grease, and silicone from an unsanded surface. If you try that on a sanded surface, if you have a deeper sand scratch, some of those solvents could actually get down in that sand scratch and be an issue. So make sure you're not going to be wiping with those. And avoid wiping with some kind of a metal conditioning wipe. The metal conditioning wipes do a great job to prep the surface for a coating, but they may not necessarily do a good job to prep the surface for a polyester filler. And I say that because I've seen some that actually have a small amount of an acid in them, and they leave a little bit of a coating. Some of them I've even seen will leave a little bit of a zinc chromate coating on the surface to make the next product stick a little bit better within that system and to try to give some corrosion protection after it's been wiped down. Remember, those can be a contaminant for the curing process for the polyesters. So the biggest things to avoid wiping the area with anything that's a slower solvent. Those slower solvents may not dissipate off all the way. It could leave a little bit of a residue on the surface that we're fighting in the rest of the repair. Don't use a prep wipe that's going to etch the surface or leave some kind of a coating behind. Like I said, we want to make sure we're actually onto the surface to get the best adhesion possible. Don't apply it over an incompatible or an uncured coating. As I said, whenever I've seen people apply a product, they spray a coating on and then they come back and apply something over top of it without knowing when that surface is fully cured, and then trying to apply it over that surface when it's been unsanded and it's still in the curing process. You're putting something that cures fast and capping it off over something that cures slow, and that could be the problem for you.